Good afternoon, and welcome to Theodore Parker Church, a progressive spiritual community gathering since 1712. My name is Reverend Joanna Lubkin, and I serve here as the interim minister of this congregation. Delighted to welcome you to the 2020, what year are we in? 2022 Theodore Parker Lecture. Gosh, It's been some time. As a Unitarian Universalist church, we aim to be reaching in to create inclusive, loving communities, to reach out to our larger community for justice and equity, and to reach forward toward the world as it could be. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts or abilities may be, whatever your gender or sexual orientation, whomever you love, wherever your life and faith journey has taken you, you are welcome here today. Welcome to those of you who are joining us here in our historic sanctuary, and to those who are joining us in our newly historic digital sanctuary online. A few logistical pieces of welcome for those joining here in person. Please do keep your masks on at all times while inside. And should you need it, you can find a single stall accessible restroom just outside those swinging doors on my right to your left as you know. My right to your right as you leave, yes. Those of you who are joining on Zoom, we're using a webinar feature, which means it looks a little different from your average Zoom room, but you can always chat to any of the hosts. So that would be Helen Horrigan, Rose Gologli, or myself if you need any assistance. Today's event is being recorded, and we'll post the recording of the video on our website as soon as we can, probably within the next week. So feel free to be as fully present as you can be right now, knowing that it will be recorded. You can go back and check for things you missed. The Theodore Parker Lectures were begun in 2014 to honor the legacy of Reverend Theodore Parker, the 19th century minister, abolitionist, theologian, and bold proponent of social justice, for whom our church is named. This annual event, well, annual except for when global pandemics interfere, this event invites clergy and theologians and activists of all stripes whose work reflect that prophetic vision that Theodore Parker described as bending the arc of the moral universe toward justice. And we know that that arc doesn't just bend on its own, it bends when we bend it. So we want to lift up the voices and stories of those who are on the front lines of that bending and invite us all in to help. Many thanks to the dedicated planning team who has brought about today's event, to Carrie Turan, Karen Kirchhoff, Deb Ferenz, and Allison Gottlieb for their work bringing this event together, and to City Life Vida Urbana for co-sponsoring today's lecture, which is called Housing, the Key to Community. We've all been through quite a lot as a local and global community over these past few years. And today's event reflects both the current state of the world and I think the state of our hearts. Rather than provide you with an academic or intellectual presentation, we hope that today's event will be more conversational, more relational, and more storyful than perhaps previous years have been. And as today's conversation centers the experience of those facing housing insecurity, we want to take a moment to hold those in Ukraine in our hearts. As millions of people there find themselves in a war zone and are either fleeing for their lives or fearing for them, we lift up our prayers for safety and peace. So I invite us to just take a few moments of quiet to send up our prayers and our hopes to the people of Ukraine. Thank you. I am just delighted to get to introduce our speaker for this year's Theodore Parker Lecture/Conversation, Mr. Ronel Remy, the statewide organizer for City Life Vida Urbana. Many of us folks who've lived in the Boston area for a while already know the powerful community organizing work that City Life does around housing justice. But for those for whom it's newer, City Life Vida Urbana is a grassroots community organization that is committed to fighting for racial, social, and economic justice and gender equality by building working class power. They promote individual empowerment, develop community leaders, and build collective power to effect systemic change and transform society. That is a vision I can get behind. When I asked Ronel how he'd like to be introduced today, I was struck by the fact that he didn't recount his professional or academic credentials or tell me all about his role at City Life. Like a good community organizer, he told me his story, why his work for housing access is a deeply personal one. What Ronel said, and I'm grateful that you gave me permission to share this, is that he wanted people to know, first and foremost, that he's a husband and a father. He describes his daughters as very strong women, and the youngest of whom is the one who leads them in the fight. There was a time in Ronel's life when he was facing deep financial troubles, with creditors and debt collectors calling incessantly. Ronel said that his response was essentially to run and hide, that when the phone rang, he would ask his 6-year-old daughter to say, "Daddy's not home." But one day, his young daughter turned to him and said, "Daddy, you always tell me not to lie. Are you afraid of these people?" That simple question asked by his loving young daughter broke through to him. In a Zoom call, Ronel told me, "I needed to hear those words. I was in jail in my own life, and she forced me to face it. I went into the bathroom and locked the door, and I have never cried so much. She helped me acknowledge that I was afraid." Since then, Ronel says he answers the calls. The issues of housing insecurity have been a part of Ronel's life since he was born. He said that the same day he was born, he and his mother were evicted. His mother had been living with a woman in the north of Haiti, and his father was in jail. The food that they served his mother was a little dry, and when she said so, the lady of the house kicked her out with a newborn. Ronel and his mother lived in a marketplace for a month. So when it comes to the housing justice organizing that City Life does, Ronel says he was born to do this work. In the Haitian culture that Ronel was raised and steeped in, there's a strong emphasis on accompanying each other. A community value not to leave anyone isolated or alone. And that's what City Life does. It shows up for those in need of support, creates and builds and strengthens community, and humanizes people in systems that were designed to dehumanize. So as Ronel shares today, both his own stories and those of the folks he works with, and as we each reflect on our own lived experiences, we hope you'll experience today's conversation with an open heart, with curiosity, and with a sense of connection. So with that, I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Ronel Remy.
I want to say it's an honor, it's a privilege to be here with you. I don't take these things lightly. I believe folks of faith have a duty to speak up, to erase the wrong, things that were done, things that are actually that going on right now. So as you heard earlier, my name is Ronel Remy. I was born in the north of Haiti. My family came from the south. My dad was in the army. He basically kidnapped my mom, and I was born there. But something else I usually don't share with too many people is that I was born twin, actually. It was Ronel and Romel. So my brother, at the time in Haiti, if you had a child, you were supposed to pay what we call now the equivalent of $1 in the city that we were born in. But at the time, my dad was in jail. My mom only had enough for one. And from the get-go, I was always safe. And she picked me up. She told the nurse, take care of the other one. I should be back with the cash to get the other one. So apparently around 10 o'clock when she went back, she found flies on him. He was left in the sun unattended, so he passed. And on top of that, we got evicted, you heard earlier, the same day. So my story is not it's not a happy story. It's not a happy start. But I made it a path as I grow, as I learn as a man, to always look for the end of the story. I care about great start, great beginning and stuff, but I would rather you tell me the rest of the story. What can I learn from your story? And today I stand up, I'm sitting here before you. I am a story. I don't really have a story, because my story is a human story. And I wanted to do something with you before we really start. There is a principle I learned, and I love to share it with folks. It's called getting with what is. But if you're anxious like me, you would say, what is what is? So the first thing I would tell you, well, I don't know. If I say I know, I'm lying. What is has no definition, has no taste, has no shape, no flavor, no texture. But yet, what is the thing, because it's all around us. It's a principle that helps us to be grounded in what we call RUA, respect, unity, acceptance. So which is what all of us want, to be respected, to belong to something, to some people, and to know that we matter, right? So that exercise goes that way. I know most of us, we were born, we know how to smile, to cry. We had to learn to snap our fingers, however, right? That exercise says, if you are willing to do this with me, it's gonna work, but let me demonstrate. You snap like this, right? But now all of us gotta do it. Let's go, let's do 1, 2, 3, snap. No, it's not going well, because I hear on this side, some doing it and some we're catching up. You can have a feel for it, but let's be grounded in it and let's do it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, hold it there. Now go with the left hand too, if you can. Okay, so let it die slowly. So what did we just do here? It's nothing, we just clap fingers. But in the process of us clapping fingers, we got united on purpose, not by accident. So when it comes to tell us the story of what's going on around our world, I'd like it every time you can envision you sitting on top of a pyramid. Not outside of it, you're part of it. The individual is on top of the pyramid. Let's say you're on the driver's seat. The base of that pyramid, however, sits on humanity, the edge. Humanity when you hear humanity, you should hear, again, acceptance, respect. You should hear dignity also. You should see love, even when we are different. And our world now puts so many things against us that tell us we are different. Because we are different, we matter less, or we don't matter. So my story, I always want to tell my story. I am a story, instead of letting the world tell my story for me. So what you're going to hear after a while is how I came to City Life, how I'm working as the state organizer, how I had to discover who I was as a man, as a husband. I used to lie to my children and to City Life members when we had those meetings in JP. I was fake in a way. I was on survival mode. When I come to those meetings, I would tell folks a lot of times, hey, good afternoon, my name is Ronel Remy. I would smile much more than I needed to. I will fold my shoulders like it's to shrink. I didn't want folks to see me for the way I am built. Because this word saying, because of the color of my skin, because of the shape of my nose, because of my differences than most people who look at me, I was either less or I was either not good enough. So to be accepted, I would smile, I would fold my shoulders, forget that I have a big butt, telling folks, you can accept me even if you don't accept the butt. These are wrong things, right? But how often do we compromise our principles because we want to be accepted? And this is what the communities I serve, many of them, they have to do every day. I spoke to someone, a lady who was getting evicted. She told me, I know I owe him $2,000, but he owns the house. He has the right to evict me because I cannot pay. And I said, but shouldn't it make sense that you want to stay and fight? She said, it's not only that. If I had more education, I would not be in that position. So she becomes a victim in her own mind, like I was a victim in my own mind. Because housing is a tool for profit, it's commodified. Most people don't see it as human right. And that is wrong too. How do I value your life if it's just for how much I can make from you? And this is our world right now. And we see it in the church as much as we see it outside the church. So we need to say that. And we need to empower each other to understand what can we do. That's the rest of the story. Now I'm going to move here. I'm going to speak with Karen here, and we're going to talk a little bit. I don't know the question she has for me, but I came to City Life facing eviction. I thought I was lost in my mind. I had 13 families who faced the same thing I was facing, and I didn't want to fight. My daughter saved us. She also saved my life, because I wanted to commit suicide, because I felt as a father, as a man, as a husband who couldn't feed his family, I didn't deserve to live. I wanted to take something precious to the world, because I thought I made no sense. But I am glad she asked me those questions. And she's been asking me the same questions since then. Every day I want to remind myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I want to be connected with people, even some of them who don't like me? Why does it matter? That is the human story. That is the human conditions that we have inherited. So sorry to be a little bit emotional, but it's to show you how important that is to me. It's a matter of life and death. And those folks I represent who look like me, they approach it that way. When they come to City Life, They want to fight, they want the help, they want to see an attorney, but those who organize like me know to ask them, how are you sleeping? When was the last time you ate with your family? And those are tough questions to ask them. But when they trust us enough, they will answer us. And that's why we're here. And let me go to Karen.
Thank you, Ronel.
You're welcome.
You know, I think a really powerful thing is hearing people's stories. I think a really powerful thing that you're sharing and modeling, and that is that our hearts are touched when we hear people's stories, and it's a very vulnerable thing to share a story, and it's also very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, you know, you have a model at City Life to have stories
Yes.
be shared, and that stories, you've talked about changing the narrative
Mm-hmm.
by people sharing their stories. And I wondered if you could talk more about that.
The stories goes that way. When someone, actually, when we used to be in JP, when folks to come to physical meetings, actually, there is a segment of that meetings that we have folks coming in front of the room to say their names, you know, what's going on with them around housing. And at the end of it, there is a ritual that we do with the sword and the shield. You know, City Life, actually, I think we're going to see the slides after a while. City Life, how we organize, we use the sword, the shield that create the offer. The sword is basically, it could be a public letter that you write for someone. It could be you counsel them, you help them have a tenant association. They start a tenant association. The shield are basically attorneys that goes along with them to court when they're gonna go alone and they're afraid, they're ashamed. But when they begin to tell their story, one thing we help them to lose, we ask them to lose, is the shame and fear they come with. Because all of us come with shame and fear. And I don't want to go too far in that, but it's true. So when they're able to tell that story, and they hear the whole room, the organizer asks them a question: do you want to fight to stay in your homes? And they will say yes. And we say, you need to say it with a passion, with a determination to hear everybody else. And when they say it with enough energy, and they hear the whole room saying, guess what? We will fight with you. And when that happens, some of them got emotional, like I was a while ago. And then that's where it begins. After they speak with the attorney, they understand how much rights they have and what they can do. And every eviction have mistakes in it, but some of them don't know. Some of them would rather move out and don't see what's going on. So we say no to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, City Life and you have dedicate your life and your work to changing systems, addressing racial and social justice issues, and pushing for housing as a human right, and also talk about building working class power. And we don't really hear about that at all. We hear about working for the middle class, or in campaigns and for people running for office. It's always about building the middle class. So it's a new frame for us to think about building working class power. And I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about that, and also how that happens, even from knocking on someone's door with a clipboard and saying, what are your conditions? What are you living with? And then connecting up with others in the same building, and then those buildings connecting up with other buildings across the city. So I think it'd be helpful to hear more about what does that mean, and what does that look like? What is the vision? What is the prophetic vision about building working class power, and how does that fit with us moving toward a world that's more just and visionary?
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for this question. When we say building working class power, I want to go with you a little bit around race. I'm organizing a group of folks now in a place called Hayes, Massachusetts. They call Devon Crest Alternate Association. Now, 80% of that housing place, structure are white people. 80% of them. And we canvassed them, and we started meeting with them, and they need help, a lot of help, because they're getting evicted. That investor came from New Hampshire, spent $11.6 million, and within 6 months, he purchased the complex, trying to evict everybody. Not saying he wanted to negotiate, he wanted to raise the rent. He said, I want you out. 200 families. So now, again, I want to say it, Caucasian. And I'm the state organizer. I went to them. So now I will not say this loud for everybody to hear, but since we're family, I say it to you. My help was not really welcome. And it didn't take me too long to understand, because of the way I look, that was the issue. Because several times we tried different things, they did not work. But apparently, another organizer with me, Steve Mitchum, a mentor of mine, who happened to be Caucasian, would say the same thing I say. They would listen to Steve, but not to me. So it took us very little time to understand that. If you could see that, when we talk about that middle class, that connection, the opportunity there to do something very, very different. But what the investors count on, what the big landlord, the big corporations count on, is just the fact you're not going to talk to your neighbor. You don't want them to know you can't pay your bills, number one. You don't want them to know that you have roaches and mice and rats in your house, that you have mold in your apartment, and you have children that suffer asthma, or that you suffer from asthma. You want to hide that. That's the shameful part of it. You internalize the shame, number one, and you internalize guilt also, saying, if they know I'm having those conditions, they would blame me. We were born in a system that blames us and punishes us for the slightest things we do. So in order for you and I not to be punished, we would rather be silent. And they win, because we don't fight, because we don't speak. So to build that middle class, to get folks to understand, we have so many things in common. We are human, number one. And I told a friend of mine, and I think I may have said that with Reverend Joe, all of us, when we get emotional, when we cry, I've never seen the tears go up the hill, up your face, because you Asian or you indigenous people or you black. No, it will go down. It cannot go up. So on the basis of that, why can't we work about the things we can do to change the status quo? Get folks housing, get them education, get them also health care. Why should somebody die because they can't pay? And we call ourselves the greatest economy, the greatest country in the world. America has the wealth that can feed the world over. But a small percentage has it all. The majority don't have a lot. This is what we're facing. And this is what we say, if the middle class understand we have the people power, we can organize, we can unionize to see what we have, what we need, and produce what we need, and take care of the environment. Why should we destroy the only planet right now we can live on? We're destroying it. We don't care about who's coming after us. It's okay if there is no more planet for you, if there is no air, no water for you. We don't care. We're going to live to the fullest of our life. We want everything. This is greed. That's why I have this. You can see it. Greed. And mismanagement also. I hope I didn't go too far.
We just want to also say that there are
Okay.
purple cards and pencils, and if you have any questions, you can write them on cards, and then the greeters will bring them up. You know, one of TPC member who heard your talk at the UUM Urban Ministry mentioned that city life was a sanctuary for many people. And we're in a sanctuary
Yes.
here. And you're organizing across the state a lot of churches. What's the role of churches? How can a lot of us are thinking, how do we be allies and co-conspirators in amplifying the issues that Black and brown and indigenous and working class people are bringing to us. And I wonder if you could talk about what is the impact on churches, what can churches do, and where we can be allies, and how.
If any branch of our society has the power to change things, it's the churches. Because folks go there. Folks are hungry, they go there. They need help, they go there. Spiritual help, moral help, they go there. Physical help, they go there. So when the congregations are healthy, the communities are healthy. When the communities are getting evicted, guess what? The churches are getting evicted also. So we reach out to many churches in Boston. We've been in touch with a congregation from Blue Hill Ave. We talk with pastors and go to the churches. I remember one of the pastors, I won't call his name, did not want us to speak. He said, you may be outside, you could pass fires. At the end, that would be okay for us, you know. So I asked him, is that okay if I say hello to the congregation at least? He said, oh, yeah, you can do that. So, and I work also, I'm a chaplain, and I said, okay, I say hello, I'm a chaplain, I'm this and that. I have many lives, everybody. And then I said, if you're interested, we can talk to you, we can show you what we do. And I told them, remember, when you're getting evicted, your church is getting evicted also. So people wanted to hear more, and we talk. And not only he reached out to me several times, we've been able to counsel many of the members of the church. He was afraid that we might distract the congregation, but they're very much stronger now because of how he approached the situation. And I wanted to give credit to a UU church in Westford, Massachusetts. January 31st, we had a rally in Westford. That's where the head of the housing, I can't recall, I have a brain freeze now, but the head of the housing things in Boston, you know, the one who could call a meeting, you know, for the state, he lives there, and his name is Representative Arciero. We were going to his district, and we had many calls not to come there, because apparently Westford is very white, you know. And I went to the town, I stayed there for half an hour on Main Street. I did not see one person of color. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but just to show you how exclusive it seemed to be. But the church was supportive of us. It snowed, we didn't have a place to do it on the center of town, there were a lot of snow. So the church answered the call and said, you can do it in the yard. Not only it was a good turnout, the pastor of that church gave us a speech, a grounding speech. And we love it so much, and that makes a difference. We need to come out of our comfort zone to support each other. This is what the church can do. And I feel in this phase, the UU church are leading that way. We are more flexible to understand we need to welcome people, because there's so many things outside that are destroying their lives. We're not saying we're going to fix anybody's lives, but we need at least give them a place to sit and reflect and make a choice. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Instead of choices being made for them. The previous administration used to have kids in cages, and I remember the church in Westford, I saw a sign, they receive immigrants, they protected them, they shield them. Those are the things we are called to do. Those are the things we cannot negotiate. And I believe in that to the core of my being. When it comes to protecting lives, I feel the unborn has as much right as the oldest person. Life is sanctified. We have to respect that. We cannot decide which life is more important or which life matters the most. And the society we live in right now is telling us that you don't matter because you're sleeping with so-and-so. You don't matter because you look a certain way. You don't matter because you pray to a different God. You don't matter because you come from a different country. You just don't matter. And I'll tell you a secret also. I'll share this with you. I'm from Haiti. I grew up in Haiti. I saw hunger. I have experienced hunger. My father, my grandfathers, my great-grandfathers, all of them experienced hunger. My grandmothers, to all of them. Each one of them gives me something different. But one thing I take for myself is I need to come out of my comfort zone every day to be with you, regardless of how you're thinking, of how you receive me. At the end of it, what can we do together to at least speak, to at least understand each other? Communication is important. We could understand we're not going to work together. That's fine. But we don't need to be enemies, to be killing each other because we don't understand each other. And this is what we have right now. Even in the church, the competition is so fierce. Competition to be first, to be right, not to be cordial, not to be respectful. Obviously, I see when someone say, "Hey, how you doing?" They don't really care how you're doing. They just acknowledge you here and I'm here. That's it. But if you really care, how am I doing? When you say, "Good morning, how are you?" you will take a pause to hear my answers at least. But when you're not even ready to do that, then why are you asking me how am I doing? And this is the things we are living. Those are the cards that were dealt to us. And it's up to us to do something about it.
Can I shift a little bit to legislation?
Sure. Oh, a lot of them, yeah.
So on the state and city level, there's a lot coming up that needs support. The COVID housing equity bill, lift the ban on rent control, TOPA,
Yes.
had an option to purchase.
Actually, if you can hold on that. Actually, folks, I'll tell you this. I won't tell everybody else. But TOPA passed the House last year. Guess what? Governor Baker vetoed TOPA. TOPA would help those who are facing eviction to actually find nonprofit who can help them purchase the building so they don't get evicted. There was nothing in there for him. Since he knew he was not going to run again, he doesn't want to become the governor again. But he vetoed it. He killed it. So we had to start over again. When you see this thing, think of the special interests, how much money they flooded the Massachusetts government with to make sure those things don't get done. The people are suffering, they're dying. Others are making big profit. That's the trade.
Thank you, yeah. And I think there's two more, an act enabling local options for tenant protection
Yes.
and stabilization of rents and evictions.
Yes.
Which these resources will be posted on TPC's website. So any recommendations or advice you might have for us responding to these pieces of legislation?
If you can support all of them, it would be good, because it means that you're really standing in solidarity with those who are facing eviction, those who don't know what they don't know, those who are confused, those who are afraid and ashamed. And also, I wanted to invite you, if you have the time tomorrow, at Litchmere Station, in Boston, right around Cambridge. There is an organization named CAS in Somerville. They're organizing a rally because of the train station in Lichmere, brand new station, built on behalf of the community by the city because it was needed. Now many people are facing eviction because the rent goes so high they can't afford to live here anymore. Imagine if you live in that community for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and now you're getting evicted because somebody wants to make a profit. What about you? What about your emotional connection with the place, the store you know, the neighbors? So obviously, if we don't support this cause, we're being pushed further and further inland. And we see them big corporations, big investors coming over saying, I want it, I'm taking it. So now I'll give you a good analogy. If you see somebody at a street corner holding a gun and rob somebody, you say that person should go to jail. And so what? They deserve to go to jail. But somebody that don't hold a gun, a physical gun, but use the power of government, the justice system, to hijack a whole community, take their money, we say they are successful, they are good. This is barbaric. This is violence on those communities of folks who cannot defend themselves, who don't even know what's going on, what hurt them, Some lose family members, mothers, fathers, uncles. They lose communities because of these things. And when we don't say anything, we agree with what's going on. We condone them. And that is wrong too. And I don't want to, at the end of my life, and go and say, I saved myself, I saved my family, that was good enough for me. I want to be remembered as someone who made it possible for others to let their voices be heard, for others to stand and say, I'm not going to take this laying down, I want to fight. So I am a fighter, a spiritual fighter, a physical fighter, a moral fighter. So my question for you now, how do you want to be remembered? Because every one of us, we're going to be remembered for something.
So Ronel, we could do questions, take questions from people here, or do your slides now?
Questions? Oh my God, you guys are happy. Thank you. It's at 11. I know at 11 is closing, but at 10, if you could please be there by 10, because we told the cast members will be there at 10, and some of us will speak. It's very important that we support them. Yeah, because they came to Westwood, they were enforced. Yes.
Let's see. Okay, so there's some questions about working with government, some questions about churches, working with churches, and so I'll try to pick from some of each of these categories.
That's good.
Let's see. One question is, have you also reached out to mosques and synagogues?
That is $1 million question. This is true, and shame on me, shame on me. We reached out to one mosque that was maybe 3 years ago when someone was facing eviction, and they got the help they needed. But I must be clear, no excuses. I am a brand new state organizer. I used to do organizing in one locality. So now I'm doing everywhere in Massachusetts. So it's a struggle at the start, but we have plans, to reach out to mosque, to reach out to synagogue, to reach out to anywhere anybody wants to hear us, know there is something wrong, they need to help different congregations, different communities, we're gonna be there. But right now, it is still a struggle because we are at the ground level. So that's the best I have so far. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Do you have any thoughts about how the governor's proposal for changes to local housing zoning will help?
Well, on this, I would say, if I work for the real estate industry, I think I would have a greater assessment of that. But because I'm definitely biased in that, I feel we shouldn't have, to have special relationship either with the state government to make something happen in our community. It should have been a given. So I feel those who have a lot, they would know how to handle that. But right now, I don't know. I just know it's a big issue. It's something that all of us should come around and discuss that.
So I'll ask two more, and then we'll defer to Rose, who's checking questions in the chat. What rights does a person have if they receive an eviction notice?
Oh, wow. Those are the basic things. When you receive eviction notice, actually, I would answer you. I know I have all the good language, but I'm going to use my story. When you're facing eviction, you are so afraid, number one. You don't understand what the paper says. The first time I saw 72 hours to quit, I lost it. I thought it meant I had 72 hours to vacate the premises. We were packing things up, calling City Life at the time. First thing they told us, no, it doesn't mean you have to leave right now. It just means they started the eviction process against you. So in every other case, that's how it goes. In Massachusetts, they should try to evict you. They should start a conversation. It's not automatic. So now if you ignore it, if you disrespect the court, you don't go for an hearing, they can do that. But they will try 3 times at least. Also, when you're facing eviction, when you go to see a judge, most likely they would send you for mediation. Too often, how people don't know what mediation is. They just know they need to go and negotiate a deal, and I'll tell you how it works. That landlord or that big corporation may have 2 or 3 attorneys that are trained to sneak out what they need from you. You're facing eviction, let's say that you owe $4,000 or $5,000 you can't pay right now. And they tell you, well, anyway, this is what we're gonna do. You say that you have conditions in the apartment and all this and that, sign here. You agree you're gonna make up a payment every month until you catch up. Let's say you're gonna pay $100 more. And you sign it, we agree with it, and done deal. Most people would say, this is good. They negotiate with me. They say I could only pay $100 more. I can do it, and that's gonna be all right. But what you don't know, the fine print, you gave up your counterclaims. If you have roaches, everything in your house, you could use them as counterclaim, when you go to court. When you give that up, the first payment you miss, you can get evicted. When you go to court because you don't want to be evicted, the judge would ask you most likely, is that your signature at the bottom of the document? Your answer, if you're truthful, is yes. Did anybody force you to sign this? No. Case dismissed. You're going to get evicted because you sign away your rights to fight. But if you know what to do, if you know housing is human right, if you come to City Life, if you learn how to navigate things, how to write a hardship letter to tell about your conditions, number one, to fight, to help others fight. Not only you learn your right, you develop a community mentality with those who are facing eviction. They become your partner in the fight. And then you got a rally, I go to it. I have a rally, you come to it. We become family after a while. And that is done so fine after a while that folks, they begin so strong, they defend each other's right. And this is what the church actually should be doing.
And let's see, a question, what is a land trust? And how is City Life using this tool for people? And maybe you could talk about an example.
Good example of City Life, we have formed 3 land trusts so far. We have one in Boston, and another one is in Dorchester. It's called 6 Humphreys, and another one in East Boston, 209 Chelsea Street. Yeah. So those are communities of folks who were getting evicted, And with negotiation, with the help of the state, we were able to find a nonprofit investors who would help take those places out of the housing market completely. It could be for 99 years, that's the list that you have on the property, but it stipulates anybody, if you move, or somebody who comes in after you cannot pay extra. They're gonna pay the same amount that you used to pay, as long as they have similar economy. So it goes on how much you make and how much they feel you could pay. They talk about AMI, which is the media area income. In Massachusetts, it could go all over because they patch it with Newton, with Wesley, with other communities that are very opulent. When folks who are very well educated, Cambridge, they make a lot more than those who live, let's say, Dorchester, Mattapan, in those areas. When they could pay 30% of the account, they end up obviously sometimes paying 50, 60, 80% of their income. So because of that, from the get-go, folks are getting evicted before they even sign those leases sometimes. So that's what the land trust does, takes housing out of the market, make it affordable for the community, for the folks who live there, for as long as they can live there. And so far, there is 3 of them that City Life is involved with.
And do people put their own homes in land trusts? Is that an option?
This is an option also for those who inherited land or houses, or you could have it on a land trust. And actually, there is something like that happened very recently in Hyde Park. There's a community called Crane Ledge. They're now facing eviction because that property has 24 hectares of land, and it belonged to Jubilee Church. I didn't want to say their name, but and the person who gave them the land stipulated they couldn't sell it and make a profit, but they're selling 14 hectares to big investors, and he wants to build basically luxury apartment. And when they're talking about 13% affordable, it excludes a lot of folks. So they're talking about a golf course on it, pool, and gated community. So it's not designed for the folks who live there already. So a lot of them, they're gonna get evicted because of those decisions. So yes, if you have a land or if you have houses that you want to put into a land trust, I mean, obviously it would be a bigger conversation. You have to hire an attorney to say what you want to see and how affordable it would be for those who can afford or the higher cost of housing right now. Yes, you can do that.
Rose, do you have questions from people attending by Zoom?
Just read them from here.
Okay, Rose.
Okay, I have a question from Karen is asking, do you think it's possible for Boston to not end up like New York City, where working people can't live close to where they work?
Wow, this is a good question, but I thank you very much, Karen. I wish you had asked us that question 30 years ago at least, because I think right now that ship has sailed already, because folks cannot afford to live in Boston anymore. When I moved up here, I remember there was a cost of $15 if you wanted to register your car. And then Governor Patrick, I want to say at that time, thought we needed cost for the big dig. Remember that? And then it was stipulated that after they dig, after everything is done, that everything was go back to normal. If I ask you how much you're paying now to register your car, it's not even $17, so it's still high. So once they pass the cost to you, they're not gonna take it out. So Boston is not affordable right now, and I don't know in the future how things gonna change, but I feel if we work with the folks of Green Roots, folks of the, can't recall it right now, but we are in talk with folks who are involved with the environment, with the climate people right now.
Sunrise?
Yes, we're saying housing is human right, so the climate is human right too, right? So we're having a conversation with them to know what can we do? How do we educate folks to understand they need to take care of the planet instead of us just saying it? But that is a better attitude versus those who say, what will be, will be. Mm-hmm. So it's different, yeah.
There are two more questions.
Yes.
Is that good for
Go ahead.
from
Yes.
mine? Okay. Someone else asked if you could speak more to, you talked earlier about how churches are evicted when people are evicted. Could you speak more about that? I think they're wondering if churches themselves are being evicted, or you mean the congregation is then forced out?
Well, on that, let me be clear. I've seen in a community I live in, many times you can see, let's say, in a side of 2 streets, you probably see 5, 6, 7 churches. Respectfully, I would say, folks can have as many congregations as they want. It's not the issue there. The issue is what happened when every church, when they collect, they want to have a minimum of 10% of somebody's income when they, I'm in the church, so I understand that part. But when you cannot sustain that, when people have to do 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, number one, to pay their rent, and they're basically not too much to go for their families, for what they need, for education or for clothes and all that stuff. And now they still have to give the 10%. Half of the time they choose not to give. So when they don't give, those organizations or those churches, congregations, they tend to shrink slowly, but eventually, surely, they go away, and you see they get evicted just like a tenant would get evicted. You don't hear a lot about it because of the shame and fear. Somebody had a church there, he gets evicted, they go into a house. So the congregation is still there, technically, but yes, they got evicted. So when I'm saying this, that's exactly what I'm describing.
Great, thank you.
You want?
Okay, just one more question. Why did you choose to organize with City Life Vida Urbana for this fight?
I don't think I chose to organize with City Life. I feel I was chosen, and I was chosen by the time I was born. It was a call on my life to do something different in the world. And when I was facing eviction, when I felt I had nothing to give, I was no one, and City Life came to my rescue. I remember there was a church, a congregation in Brockton. They worked with City Life at the time. I saw they put something at my door, a flyer, come to the church, and if you're facing this and that. And I said, these people must be crazy. You think I'm going to go to church, you trying to evict me? I said, most likely, those who are trying to evict me, they end on with the church and with that company called City Life. I'm not going, I'm not stupid. So I thought I was very smart, right? But you guys know how a determined wife don't play. My wife said, okay, Mr. Very Smart. Let's talk, she said. And at the time, and I don't share that with too many people, but we couldn't even eat, you know. I worked as a chef at the time. I used to tell my daughter, the 6-year-old, when she wanted cheese or orange juice, she wanted everything, especially the things I couldn't afford. So I would say, honey, cheese are not good for you. They have so much salt. They're not good. I say, I'll make sandwich extra at work, and I will bring some home. But the bulk of it came to me, it was Christmas time one time, when they called, my daughters called my mom, and she did not want to speak with them. And because she didn't want to speak with me, because I owe my mom money, I couldn't pay. I needed to keep up with the mortgage at the time. and things were not working. So my wife reminded me of that time and says, we need the help. Let's at least go and see. It's in the church, we're Christian, right? If it's wrong, then we don't go back. So needless to say, I agree, I went with her. So we sat at the door near the exit. So if it was a trap or something, so we can go. My fear at the time was one day we will leave the house and come back to see the locks are changed and we can go inside. That was my fear. Don't ask me why, that's how I felt. And if a car stopped by the house, I was on the edge. Oh my God, they're coming to evict us. So when I went to the church with my wife and my daughters, and a gentleman named Ramon Sepulveda, he was leading the meeting. He had the sword and the shield. He was explaining what they were. And he was talking to me. He didn't live with me. No one else over there lived with me, but there was some mixed congregation. Everything that was happening to me, suicidal thoughts I was having, some of these people were sharing the same fear. And when they asked me to tell my story, this was a natural environment for me. But I didn't think I was gonna do anything, just telling my story. But when I went to court, City Life sent 35 fighters with the neon T-shirt, cheering me on, saying, "Fight, we'll fight with you." I never had that before. I'm usually the one standing to help people, but this time they came not just to help me, but to save me. And to me, that was a game changer. And I said I needed to do that to help somebody the next time they go into court, but not understanding that was gonna be not just a job, because I'm not working with City Life, really. I'm doing something that makes me happy, and I get paid for it, that's all. But when I know I was changed is that when I found out the Obama administration gave a bailout. I think at the time it was maybe $4.7 billion, which was gargantuous cost, you know. And they were supposed to give the money to the homeowners who were underwater to fix what was wrong with them. And I never got any of that money. I was still facing eviction years after. And that made me mad that somebody took advantage of me. That made me mad that my mom didn't want to speak with me anymore. That made me mad my daughters had to inherit that. And I said, maybe I don't have any other choice but to fight. But I thought I was going to fight to help my family alone, but not to help every family who's going through that situation. So when you hear eviction, it's violence, it's moral violence, it's spiritual violence. A lot of times folks who are getting evicted not only are not eating right, are not sleeping right, but are on the edge. And on top of it, when I was going through that, I lost one of my brothers I love so much. He had a severe heart attack. He died in New York on a trip to see our mother. He left a wife and 2 kids. And at the same time, I work as a chef. I always know how to cook. I've been cooking since I was 9 years old. And I got fired. I took that as being a nobody. Like, even the things I know how to do, I didn't know how to do them anymore. I was facing hard knocks. My housing conditions weigh so much on me. I miss silly, tiny, small things at work. And that goes on you. There's cycles that goes on you. It's depressing sometimes. And this is why I do this, because I want to give people opportunity to, number one, discover who they are, to understand what they can do, to understand the need to fight. Fight, if not for yourself, fight for others. It will make sense at the end. To me, at least, it made sense.
Thank you. No more direct questions, but we are getting some questions from folks wondering online if there will still be a slideshow. Is that?
Well, I think things kind of got a life of their own. We were supposed to share some slides, you know. Oh my God. Bad
It
organizer.
is up to you whether or not you'd like to. You've shared so many
That's
wonderful
up to
stories
you.
with us.
Yeah,
Actually, I would say we should definitely share a few slides because I got to give City Life their prep. It should not only be about me because it's true I did go through a lot of things, but we need to know when folks facing eviction, at least what we can do to help.
What to do? Wonderful. Do you want to come up here?
Sure,
and-
sure,
yeah.
please. Okay, so I know this slide so well, you know. No, I can see it. When we fight, we win. That's what we tell folks most often. But too often it's not easy to fight because folks are afraid and ashamed, like I said earlier. But those who don't fight, guess what happened? Okay. Those who don't fight already lost. So that's what we mean when we say that. So you could go to the next slide, if you don't mind. So that's a family that we helped. They went to court, and we explained how the sword and the shield work. When that family was going to court, we were there to support them. Number one, we were there inside the courtroom. That does something. When you go alone, it's different. You feel morally you don't have the support, but when you see others with you, not only you have the support, those attorneys which you also help you stay grounded, you know. You could go to the next slide. Sword and shield in the offer, yeah. Now, this is the sword in action. That gentleman you see here on the wheelchair, I replaced him at City Life. His name is Jim Brooks, a giant man. And he led a fight for somebody who was facing eviction. When they go to a rally, a vigil, those are the sword in action. We shed light on what's going on in the community, how the life of those facing eviction are impacted. Anytime we do that, that's the sword in action. That gentleman used to do an exercise at City Life, asking folks, he says, okay, I want to stand with you, but it's such a magical thing. We got to do it quickly. I want you to close your eyes. And when I say open it, if you're good, you'll see me standing up. And then, but every time we do it, he's still sitting down. He said, you blink too fast, you know. But it was such a good thing for him to inspire us that way. Let's go to the next slide. All right, now that's the shield. Attorneys from Greater Boston Legal Services, from Harvard University's professors who work with City Life. When someone comes in facing eviction, they don't know how to speak with those attorneys. First of all, they're afraid to even hear they have rights. They say, all I need to know, tell me how I can stay maybe for a few months. But when we have tenant association, they fight, they learn, wait a minute, I can stay? These folks, they help negotiate a deal for a place called Waldeck in Orlando. People were facing eviction. The landlord was such a slim lord. He was in the reef for, I think, 1.3 million at the end that we negotiate to purchase the building for. The community put their resources together. Land Trust was able to help them, and they're still home because of that. So, yeah, now, this is also something that we did here for 6 Humphreys. 6 Humphreys are, how call that, SRO, that single room that are rent. Folks were facing eviction because an investor coming to the city paid his money, he wanted everybody out. Folks who lived there 12, 14, 50 years, he didn't know their names. He called everybody John Doe and Jane Doe. And that's how he tried to evict them. When City Life heard of that, we went and organized them. And after almost 4 years, they were successful. There's one of them who died, a lady, she died in her sleep. And there is a gentleman who had a stroke, but they led this fight. And now they purchased the complex. And I think in a few months, in April, we're gonna celebrate with them because of COVID, because it's been cold, we haven't been able to celebrate with them. But when that happens, we would love if you could join with us to see how it is like. You could go to the next slide. Now, when the pandemic hit, we didn't know what to do. Everybody was running and hiding. So the courthouse was still open. So we had to fight to shut the courthouse down because folks were packed in like sardines. So after we did that, we had to come up with solutions. Solutions mean that we had a hotline for folks to call us when they were facing eviction or didn't know how to pay, if they needed money for raft. And that number, nowadays in English, folks used to call us. In Spanish, they call us also. We were able to find, to use money from RAF and Urbana and to help them to stay home. About RAF, I'll say this. RAF was 8 months behind in the applications. And let me explain this. The folks who were facing eviction from our communities, most of them, they read and write, but they didn't understand how the internet works. They didn't understand Zoom. We couldn't meet with them, really. So to help them with RAF was very difficult. RAF had a system, if you start an application, a week and a half, or you don't come back to it, you needed to upload document. Once you didn't do that, you had to start over. And many times, folks had to start over. So many of them were in the rear for a long time. So let's go on the next one. Next slide. We're asking to stop eviction during the pandemic, and we still have a bill at the State House called the Leave the Ban on Rent Control #1. We also have another bill called the Eviction Defense Bill, and we also have TOPA. But all those bills, I can say safely, they extended them. Only TOPA they see favorably right now. Those other two bills, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's when you come. That's when you can make calls. You can call your legislators. You can tell them you're concerned of what's going on in those communities. And your phone call is so huge, so important. They will listen to you when they say, uh-oh, I don't want to see this in my community. They respect it because you have the power to say that. You acknowledge you can say that. But imagine somebody who doesn't understand they have the power. They don't even want to say that. They get evicted when that happens. So let's go to the next slide. I thought I had something else you can do. That we are online. If you want to reach City Life, there should be a hashtag. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are also on Instagram. So just look for CLVU. If you want to visit us, there you go. Oh, thank you. Yeah. You should connect with us. Actually, we do have a meeting every Tuesday in English from 6:30 to 8:30, and on Wednesday we have from 6:30 to 8:30 also in Spanish. We can definitely share those Zoom link with you. We don't share them with too many people because we got Zoom bomb one time. It was really ugly. So once you come to our meetings, you see how we do things, then you can volunteer with City Life. You can support those communities, and you can also support City Life. Why not? You can give donations. You can do to CLVU or www.clvu.org, and you can see what we do. You can see the bills we support. You can see how we are involved in the community and how it would be important that you build community with us. And if we don't have anything else, I mean, while I have this platform still, I wanted to say thank you for two reasons. Thank you for making me welcome. I've seen in everyone's eyes here, I am not a stranger, so that's good. Thank you for opening your heart, your mind, for being willing to be connected. Because if you were not willing, we would have never got connected. So I don't know how much you learned, what's your takeaway, but before I go sit down, I was wondering if maybe one or two of you can share what you liked mostly about the meeting, or what you think we could have done without, or if you have a takeaway. We could do at least two of them, but I know Rose is going to work on a survey that we could do a follow-up later, but I wanted to share that with you.
If anyone would like to share a reflection now, I can come with.
Claire? Yeah.
Yeah. Just speak into the mic so folks at home can hear you.
Well, I thank you so much for being here, Ronel, and I've heard Ronel speak before, and I remember the first time I heard you share your story about evictions, and that actually he didn't tell you everything. He was displaced 6 times.
6 times, yeah.
And I just think a lot of times these stories are so important, such an important ingredient in a presentation. It's not like you're floating above this reality that you're just observing. You've actually lived it. And I think that is a powerful component. So thank you for sharing what you did.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, I also wanted to say something about the power of stories, and I was really moved by your story, by your daughters pushing you, and the honesty of children, which is just incredibly powerful, and also what you said about people feeling shame and how much we're taught in the society that things are our fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that if people, when housing is run down and, like you talked about, if people have cockroaches and things, that somehow it's not the fault of the landlords who don't maintain the buildings and make the repairs and do the things that they're supposed to do, but, the fault of the people that live there, and how much has to be done to change that narrative. So that felt very powerful to me.
Thank you. Thank you. There's another hand there. Wow.
Something that I'm reminded of today that was also very clear in the film A Reckoning in Boston what is show up. I feel as though that's my work as someone who is safe at home. Show up for others.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Yes.
Ronel, thank you so much for sharing so much of your life and your personal story, and just perspectives and understandings about this issue that's so rampant in our city and across the country. And we want to thank you
Oh, God.
from the bottom of our heart.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
And we,
Thank you, everybody. So, thank you very much. Although City Life wouldn't want me to receive that, but it's okay. Thank you. We like a family here. Thank you very much. But I wanted to say that when we do something like that, it could be emotionally drainful. And I know that. I know, obviously, it's been that way for me, and it's not something I'm afraid of. But I wanted, as we're closing, as we're living, not only I thank you, but I wanted to do something with you that help you understand. Actually, it's not something we can explain. I was wondering if you could put your hand on your left shoulder, like that. And once you do that, give yourself a pat in the back. And I'm doing this to say, too often we're waiting for others to give us a pat in the back to say, good job, to say, you're fighting on, you're resisting, but we never do that for ourselves. So don't wait for someone to do that for you. Do that for yourself. At least you come here, you wanted to hear about this, to see what change you can help bring. And I learned something. In the midst of the storm, we can still create strategically. So don't be afraid of the storm. People are facing eviction. People are afraid there is COVID, there is this and that. Yes, it's always going to be there. What can you do? What's your position? You can avoid a lot of things for yourself and for others, which means hardship are real. We also are real. Hardships sometimes are determined. In my own story, I've seen that many, many times. But I can be determined also. So if that's how we win, that's how we win. We stand with each other, for each other, despite our differences or our similarities. We stand, we fight. We stand, we fight. We fight, we stand. That's why when we give ourselves a pat in the back, we acknowledge that. So I say, fight on. Let's fight.
When we fight,
We win. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Oh, you're wonderful. I didn't know that. You're surprised.